I noticed that we're kind of in the corn. I went to Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana. The more Purdue guys in the room? Yeah. All right. I'm an electrical engineer, and so I got used to having coffee in the corn regularly in college, so it's nice to be back in that situation. As just heard, I'm from Yursell. Yursell empowers women and men to sell their own cars themselves for maximum cash safely and easily. We're the first and only end-to-end desktop and mobile provider that also provides safe, local, on-the-ground private facilitation for used car sales. Our DNA was formed a couple of years ago. Maybe some of you folks have heard about some of these types of stories, but a couple of years ago, my partner, preface this by saying my partner has been in used cars for over 20 years. And so I've been around used cars because I've known him for about the same amount of time. But we saw a story about a grandfather. His granddaughter came to him, and she didn't feel comfortable selling her car herself. And she said, "Grandpa, will you help me?" Grandpa goes down south of Waco, meets a buyer. But the buyer isn't a buyer at all. The man beats him nearly to death, leaves him to die, takes a car, and robs him. And so we were horrified. I don't know how you feel about it, but we wanted to find out if that was happening regularly. It turns out it was, all over the country. And of course here in Texas, most recently in Houston, father of four, went to sell the family car, gone for 2 days. They find his body, no car, robbed. So we knew we needed to fix this problem. I'm a veteran of mobility and IT, and I'm all about big problems. Obviously went to Purdue, so the engineer in me was particularly interested in this problem, and even more so because my grandmother and my mother are both single mothers. My mother for a shorter time, my grandmother raised 5 on her own. So single mothers was a big issue for me, and it turned out that very few girls and women were selling their vehicles themselves because of these risks. And for women, they're even more exemplified than for men, and clearly men are at high risk as well. And the bigger risk, even than getting some kind of physical harm, is in terms of fraud and those kinds of issues. Plus, it's just a difficult process to sell your vehicle yourself. But if you do it, of course, you get to keep a lot more equity. And that's what we're all about, helping. So our team, as I've already alluded to, is set up around this business. I'm on the software side. My partner knows the used car business very well. He's taken small dealerships to very large ones, including the current dealership where he's at, where he took those guys up to about 40 cars a month from they were about to go out of business, frankly. And they're doing about 40, 45 cars a month now. I needed that in the first 8 months with them. So our background is perfect to solve this issue. And in fact, I'll put this out to the group, since that's one of the things we do at 1 Million Cups, is that if any of you folks know a well-connected woman, we would like to add a woman face to our company for obvious reasons. So we solve the 4 main issues that are inherent to this problem. Trust, number 1, as you can imagine. The second is personal risk. The third, as you can see, is time. And the fourth is equity, of course, as I mentioned, and cost savings. So how do we do it? Well, we always tell folks you don't really have to worry about that. We do it. You just do 3 things as a seller. You take your car to the inspection at one of our certified service partners. We then go to work with a private facilitator that's assigned to your case and to your car. And his job is to bring buyers, and you show up to the buyer meeting with the vehicle at the same place you got the inspection. We then help you with negotiations and get you the money. We help take care of all the regulatory issues, all the transfer of title and all those things, and make the situation safe. Plus, we put a 90-day warranty on the car, and of course excel the extended warranties, financing, gap insurance, and provide trade-ins if a buyer needs to do that. Our company has a baseline. We always say our profit model drives our mission. So clearly our mission is around empowering women, and empowering them in this space and solving this safety issue for everyone plus getting folks back their equity. We think that's part and parcel of being a good Texan and being a good member of the United States of America, is to push for folks keeping their money and, of course, profiting from their good experience here in this country. We always tell investors, we have an opportunity to provide, first year profitability, 24-month paybacks, which is really unusual in a business that's a software-based business. But the one we're really focused on is the social community impact, which I was just talking about. We have a number of different advantages, including first mover advantage in the space. So how do we make money? That's really what it boils down to, isn't it? We make money from two different sides. We have a private sell piece, obviously, with private sellers, and we have a trade-in side of the business, which is more like a traditional dealership operates in terms of revenue model. We'll talk about the private seller piece. The private seller piece is based on the fees that we get for private sellers, which are very small. And that was part of what we put these systems in place to do, is to provide a way to reduce the cost for both sellers and buyers in this transaction. And then we make money on the financing, warranty, gaps, and trade-in pieces from the buyers. This model, of course, is fairly tight in terms of margins, but at volume makes incredibly good sense. But you have to execute incredibly well as well. Therein, why we need the folks with, like myself and my partner, who have a lot of experience on both sides of the table. What are we providing again? Trust, safety against those personal risk issues, dealing with the time issue and taking that out of the equation for folks, and of course, getting you back your equity and providing cost savings. First year cash flow neutral, as I mentioned, and of course, this model, as we focus on the buyers initially because of cost issues, provides for a validation of our market fit. From a marketing and branding standpoint, we're going after all the normal marketing channels. It's just a matter of spending money at this point. That's why we're going on an investor roadshow, actually starting next week, to providing cash to do more on the marketing side, as well as to provide some other capabilities in the company. So to wrap things up, large underserved market, unique high impact women focus, reduced risk business, and end-to-end first mover advantage. Our train is leaving the station. We will rewrite the private sale market. It's $126 billion. Thank you.
Ted, thank you very much for the presentation. Lots of information.
Snappy enough?
Yeah, you did a great job. I can give you a little more time. So the first time I read this, and again, I was just asking Malethia, because I know you're now I know the presentation, you're gearing this toward investors. But I looked at it first and I said, well, or is this a franchise? You're trying to sell it to people? And the reason I said that because I saw the 24-month return on investment. Mm-hmm. And so that's really, it's because of what you're trying, this is geared toward investors. Is that correct? Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm using this as well as an opportunity to, some of the stuff is new, and we've just put it together for that roadshow.
And you're local, or is this national, or this can be both?
It's a both. The national piece is more of a market-making piece, which is what our competitors are today. The local piece is on the ground at every meeting.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's open it up to questions. Again, please have the microphone with you as we ask the question so we can get it on video. First right here. Oh, by the way, my daughter went to Purdue also, so.
Excellent. Was she an engineer as well?
No, she's a nursing major.
Nursing's good there too.
Yeah, I have to say, when I woke up this morning, I wasn't expecting to hear about coffee and cornfields, but I get it. I get it, man, I do. Hail Purdue. The question on on the revenue model, I think the more traditional side being the private seller fees, but I'm interested in the split between that and, say, what you expect on the financing, warranty, but the trade-in especially. How much of your revenue do you see split between kind of those two sectors?
So the private seller fees, we make a little something, but it mostly covers the costs, including marketing costs and so forth. Very inexpensive. It's $99 when you sign up, so we kind of basically lose money when you sign up, but then it's $299 on the back end. That's for our preferred program, and that includes all the capabilities I mentioned. On the buyer side, though, excuse me, the financing is an area that we make some good money on, warranties as well. And then in the case where a seller or buyer rather needs to have his money right now in order to complete the transaction, we're providing the trade-ins, and we can resell those cars at a retail level and make money off of those as well.
I'm sorry, do you offer a buyout option?
Buyout for the seller?
When a seller comes to you, you say, okay, well, I'll give you a lowball an offer so that whatever they get makes them feel better, and you could just buy it out and then use that like a trade-in?
Well, so we will buy their car at any time that they like. We'll buy any car at top of the range for wholesale. But we're very honest. This thing is really about trust. So all the information we know, whether that's we're talking to you about an offer on your car for the case you're talking about, or we're talking about you selling to a private buyer. In any case, everybody knows the same amount of information. So every piece of information we get from the seller, the buyer knows. Every piece of information we know about the car, about the market, about all of those things, we help price the car, of course, the buyer's going to know.
Hi. Some of my money is going to Purdue as well. My nephew goes to Purdue pharmacology, though, not
Right.
engineering.
Excellent. I like this room more and more.
With that said, there's something that when we started down this journey, it sounds like initially it was an online business, correct?
No, ma'am. We were always wanting to be on the ground. So when we looked at the market, most of in fact, all of the guys that exist, and especially the older line guys, the folks you may have heard of, Auto Trader, for example, if you go on Craigslist or whatever, those are basically markets for cars. Even a couple competitors that have come into the market who are just focused at private sale like us are, again, just market makers online. They're not at the meetings. And that's really where the safety happens. That's really where the transaction happens. That's really where all of the issues that I mentioned, the trust issues and so forth, really come up. For example, I mean, do you really want to go on a test drive by yourself with somebody you've never met before?
I mean, I totally agree with everything you're saying. I guess my concern is that when you do, the private seller wants to sell to the buyer and the buyer has a trade-in, then where does that car go?
We take that in. So we can also move those vehicles. That's part of what we call the trade-in, well, yeah, it's up there, trade-in revenue model. And so that revenue model is somewhat similar to the way a dealer works, except in this case, you can just imagine us, we are the seller in this case to the buyers. So we'll take those cars in and resell those. And then some of them will move into wholesale to other dealers and to auction.
So that means you have a brick and mortar then for the cars?
Well, yeah, so we've got our dealership license, or we will this week, in fact. So we've established a lot to have that license that meets the state requirement, which also is another advantage, of course, obviously to buyers and sellers, that we're sitting in the middle as a bonded and licensed player in the transaction. But yeah, so we've got a physical lot that's at 121 and Mill in Louisville. Yes, sir.
Very good job. This is a genuine problem that you are solving. So good
thank
job
you.
on that.
Appreciate it.
I have a question regarding the inspection. So if I have a used car, and if I take to a dealership for inspection, they'll find 10 different leaks, and they'll say this is wrong, that is wrong, and they'll say its estimate is $5,000 to repair. If I take the same car to a local repair shop, they'll say, oh, everything is fine, just keep driving. Now, from liability point of view, how do you weigh in that when you price the car as a responsible middleman?
Oh, well, so our guys that we take it to are Honest One and Christian Brothers. They're individual franchises, but all of these guys, we check them out to make sure that they're reputable and that they're going to give you a real inspection with a real result. We need that anyway because we act as basically a trusted broker in the equation, just like a realtor does. We're going to help give you the curb appeal, if you will, to buyers, which we're going to tell you what items to fix in that inspections and which ones you shouldn't fix. but they're going to list everything that they find, but that's going to be a very honest inspection. And so that really solves that issue. But that's why you're dealing with us. So you know that our partners, we've checked them out. We're not going to partner with them and tell you about them without checking them out deeply. And of course, we also get discounts for you as well on those services.
Thank you very much, first of all, for looking at the safety factor of this. It's really important. My question is, if you are taking trade-ins, what happens if you start making more money on the trade-ins than you do on the private seller field, private seller side, and the buyer financing, warranty, gap insurance, and that sort of thing? It seems to me that if you're doing both and you're the seller, what would stop somebody who's a buyer from coming onto the lot and picking one of your cars instead of the seller's car?
Okay, so two things. One is we take the trade-ins because that helps make the sale for our sellers, because some buyers need that money. And we're going to be at the very top of what they're going to get in the market. So CarMax used to do that. They used to give top of the wholesale range. They don't do that anymore. They claim they do, but they really don't. We find it kind of comical, actually. They've kind of lured people in, so everybody takes their car to CarMax thinking they're going to get a great deal, and then they don't. But we're always going to be at the top of the wholesale range, and we know what it is. But we'd prefer, of course, our buyers to sell their car with and become a seller as well. But to answer your question, we don't try to control buyers, so you really can't control them, and you shouldn't try. They're going to buy whatever car. We'd like them to buy from us, whatever it is, but we'd love for our sellers to move the seller's car that we can. But whatever car that's best for them, we want to try to put them in it. And in fact, with our custom site, we have a less custom, it's semi-custom site right now, but we have a custom site that we've built, which is basically needing some additional security. But in that site, it'll actually help buyers get matched to the absolute right car based on their lifestyle choices and so forth. So there's a deep algorithm associated with that that will help get them in the right vehicle. Even if it's not our vehicle, we'll put them in the vehicle at maybe even at another dealer that we're partnered with.
But do you understand what I'm saying? It could be a conflict of interest for the sellers if the buyer comes to the lot intending to buy the buyer's car, and then they're like, ooh, shiny, and they buy a different car.
Okay, so that's an excellent point. They don't come to the lot. So we bring very, very few buyers to the lot. We'll bring them there for a few of our cars maybe just because it's convenient, but all of our transactions are done at our certified service partners, the Honest One, Christian Brothers, and we're also, I think we're about to get a deal with Firestone. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
So my questions are definitely on the buyer side as well. Two questions. First, I'm interested in financing, warranty, gap insurance. If you have exclusive contracts, where those loans sit on the books, how do you do the financing, approvals, et cetera? Is it per region? I'm not even sure if you just operate in Texas or other places. So I'm interested in knowing how you manage that, and is that integrated into your applications now, or is that a standalone process or a separate process? My question number two would be, I'd like to hear you contrast yourself with someone like CarMax, who kind of provides this end-to-end service at a stationary, safe location as well.
Okay. Let's take the last one first. So we're very different than a standard dealer, which CarMax basically is. They're just what you might call a master dealer. Meaning they're very large and they're in multiple locations, and they have some advantages associated with that. We're focused at private sellers, so we're focused at getting the individual a retail level on his vehicle. In fact, if they sell it themselves, they're still going to get about $1,000 less than we should get them at retail. There's a number of reasons around that, but the goal for us is to get them maximum price. If you trade your car in or you sell it to CarMax, they're going to give you a wholesale cost, which is what we were talking about earlier. And in fact, that now apparently will be lower than what we'll give you on the wholesale side too, apparently. So, so there's, in terms of that piece, let me just mention one additional thing, which is consignment. So some dealers have done consignment over the years, but consignment model everyone hates because they charge you a lot of money for that, generally between $800 and $1,500, depending on the vehicle. And they don't focus on your car because the salesman doesn't get paid very much and they don't really care. And a host of other reasons, which have really boiled down to the fact that the dealer would like to buy your car wholesale and sell it at retail, right? They would like to eat your equity instead of having you keep it. Our job is to make you keep it. Now, moving on to your second question about financing, that's through a series of banks and so forth that are partners of ours. And so we'll be adding more over time. We've got some guys that we have referral contracts with on the national scale right now. But we've actually got some guys we're talking to that we'll be able to be native with nationally. But locally, we've got guys to help folks with.
And those same financial institutions, do they also provide the warranty gap insurance?
Oh, I've got other partners
those
that we're
other
signed up
partners
with.
outside
Yes,
the
ma'am.
finance? Okay.
Yeah, for those pieces. And they're some of the top guys in the industry. The warranties are excellent.
I heard that your intention is to become a marketplace. I was just wondering if you partnered with somebody like Auto Trader, where they have customer aggregation at scale, and then you provide this as an ancillary service to them, so you get all that volume coming in the top of your funnel. Have you considered something like that so that you can get to scale faster?
So we first off, some of the places we market are, we don't do much with Auto Trader, but like cars.com and so forth, we're marketing through those guys today, and we'll probably continue forever, even after people come to our site first. But to your point, I mean, we're interested in those types of partnerships, but getting those is not a simple matter, getting the right people and so forth. And so that it would be a great thing to have. And we've been looking at a couple other options around that, including we've talked to Avis and we've talked to Enterprise about their fleets, their cell fleets. So long story short, we'd love to do that. If you have a partner, or you know somebody, a contact, and one of those guys, we'd love to talk to them.
Well, my question is about scale as well. I love the idea of being able to conduct a transaction in a safe place. You mentioned that typically the buyer, the seller, they meet at the inspection venue, correct?
And we're there as well.
And you're there. So, and I also heard you mention at least one inspector company name. And so I'm curious to know, do you have other inspector partners? Because my concern would be just how do you have enough venues available, brick and mortar type venues across the country to scale your business rapidly if you're limited to, one, doing those transactions at the inspector locations, and if you have one or just a few inspector partners?
Well, it turns out that there's kind of two pieces to that answer. The national player is Firestone, and we'll get him. I'm not that worried about that. But on a local basis, the regional guys, for example, in this region, Christian Brothers and Honest One are the two guys you can really trust overall. Actually, one of them, I won't say which one, is a little tough at the corporate level to work with, but their franchisees are amazing, and they do great work. That's the most important for us, because the trust factor that we're building in the market from both the seller and buyer side, it really revolves around our partners as well, because they become an extension of us. So to your point, in terms of growth, it's partnering with large regional players, whether it be these guys down here or others up north. There are a number of different guys, like we could talk offline if you want, or national players like Firestone.
So does that mean that you are rolling your business out regionally so that you have those inspector locations in place? It doesn't sound like you could just go all up domestic. It seems like to me you'd have to go out by some sort of territory rollout plan.
So there's, again, that's a two-sided thing as well. So on the national level, we're basically a market maker until we go into the market physically, right? So when there's enough business, then we'll be physically on the ground, and then we can extend our business from here. But right now, as we tell investors all the time, we're laser focused at creating a replicatable model here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we want to be fully entrenched here with a replicatable model, and then begin replicating that and scaling that into market over market. Our first area, of course, is Texas. We'd like to own Texas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, the top markets here, and then the top 50 around the country. And then there's an opportunity to do franchising beyond that.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming. And I would say that Ted actually prepared to be here in like less than 48 hours. So you did a fantastic job. Thank you so much for coming.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate it. I do have our final question for you, so don't be running off the stage, Mr. Ted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We do want to ask you, what can we as a community do to help you and to help your business at this phase?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, we're looking for a face of the company, woman face of the company, and so we're interested in ladies who are very well connected. They may be in entrepreneurial space, they may be from media, they could be in a number of different areas. We're even talking to one lady who's heavily connected on the charitable side, because we're also going to work with at-risk women. That's part of our mission, is to work with at-risk women as well. So we're looking for that, and we're also looking for partners, to this gentleman's point, across a wide spectrum. So if you have ideas around that, we'd be very interested to hear that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.